segments that appear above each segment as I tool to clean it up a bit and make sure we made this pattern for position accordingly in the 3D viewport. We'll now sew the shoulders and sides together using the segment sewing tool, making sure not to sew the arm slots together here, as we'll be attaching the sleeves to these later. We'll then simulate this so we start to get an idea of how our hoodie is sitting on our avatar. So I'm just going to change the colour of our fabric here so we can see it a bit clearer. And what I'm also going to do is freeze our jeans. So what this will do is make them inactive in the simulation, thus speeding things up and also making it easier to pull and tug at our hoodie in the simulation without worrying about messing up our beautiful jeans. So we can do this by selecting all the patterns associated with our jeans in the 2D pattern window, and then opening up our quick menu and selecting freeze. And now you'll see they've gone this light blue colour, which means they won't be selectable anymore in the 3D viewport. So now, looking at the fit of our torso, the first thing we can see is it's a bit tight. So let's go ahead and start fattening this out using the Edit Pattern tool. Maybe drop this collar down a bit more and stretch it out. And then drop down these arm slots and get them ready for our sleeves. So now, going back and selecting the polygon tool, I'm going to start creating our sleeves. So we'll want to make this pattern in a sort of diamond shape, with the top of the diamond roughly matching the length of our arm slots. And again here, I'm just eyeballing the measurements, so it really doesn't have to be perfect here, as we can finesse it later once we've set up the stitching. We'll then select the Smooth Curve tool and just round out this middle point here, which will be where it attaches to the shoulder. We'll now position this in the 3D viewport ready for sewing. And actually, just before we sew it, we'll want to add in one more split point here on the shoulder using the Add Point Split Line tool. With that done, we can come up here and select the third sewing icon, which is the Free Sewing tool. So unlike the Segment Sewing tool, the Free Sewing tool is going to allow us to manually draw in our seams from point A to point B, no matter how many divisions are in between. So to demonstrate, I'll come down to my sleeve and I'll select the point where I want the first seam to begin from, which will be on the middle of the shoulder here. I'll then run down the rest of the length of the shoulder and click again at where I want the seam to finish. We can now do the same thing for the other side of our seam, which would be the front left arm slot. And now we should get a nice clean sewing line up here, ready for simulation. I'll then repeat this process for the back side of our sleeve. And now we should go back and select the Segment Sewing tool to simply close up this sleeve here by first selecting the left side followed by the right side. So now that we've got that simulated, we can see it's looking a bit too tight. So we can go back and widen out the length of the sleeves here using the Edit Pattern tool. And I'll also just once again ensure I'm updating the particle distance on some of these patterns to 10mm as well, so we get a nice high resolution result. And on that note, I'm also going to update the fabric properties here by selecting on my hoodie material in the object browser, and then changing the physical property preset to cotton stretch sateen. This should now simulate more accurately to what we would typically expect from a hoodie or jumper type cotton fabric. Next, I'm going to add in a new rectangle at roughly the width of the bottom of our sleeve. This is going to act as the end cuff for our sleeve. Let's then position this in the 3D viewport above our avatar's wrist, and then proceed to sew it to the sleeve using the segment sewing tool. Then similarly to our sleeve, we'll need to close up our rectangle by sewing the two ends together like so.
Oh hey! Hi!
So now that I'm happy
Mr.
with how this
Wednesday.
arm component is looking, I'm going to want to copy this over to the other arm. So let's do
Okay.
this by again
You know
opening up
something
the
now?
quick menu and selecting the symmetric pattern tool.
I said I'm on the stream.
We'll then position this into place
Oh,
in
you're
the
talking to
3D
me?
viewport, and then